So before I introduce our first reader, I just wanted to make a plug for another virtual creative writing event. The award-winning author Sahar Mustafa will discuss and read from her novel, The Beauty of Your Face, on Monday, December 6th at 7 p.m. The event is free and open to the public, and I'll actually put the registration form link in the chat once we get started. Without further ado, we'll start off with our first reader, a fiction writer, and her name is Zahra Lahiji, and she'll be reading from her fiction. Zahra is a senior majoring in English. She was born and raised in Texas, but spent 2 years in Iran and 2 years in England before returning to the States. She enjoys reading, writing, and traveling when she can. So take it away, Zahra.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Hi, everyone. I'm Zahra, and I'm going to read from my short story titled Cauliflower. I really hated sleeping. The feeling of pins and needles as the organizers pushed them through either side of my head right at my temples. I didn't even know what or why they did it. I woke up in the mornings with a bad headache, remembering just bits and pieces of the night before, waiting for my turn to be removed from the machines that were spread around the room. I was always jealous of Telma because she was removed from the machines first, but also the last to be put on. That's what she told me. I didn't know for sure because I was always put to sleep before her. It was probably just a few minutes difference, but that still didn't really seem fair. Anyways, I just really hated the sleep machines and sleeping and all of it. I didn't really get why the seniors were always so obsessed with coming back to them. It was like sometimes they couldn't even wait their turn, they were so excited. One time, Telma dared me to ask what was wrong with them. I was too scared to do it. I was only 10, a little girl to them, and I didn't want to get beat up or mocked. So after years and years of the sleep machines, I came up with an idea to bring a notebook with me to help me figure it out. I wasn't allowed technically because papers and pens and recording devices weren't allowed in the laboratory. I didn't know why. It was just a rule, but it was also just a notebook and a pencil, so I didn't think I'd get into too much trouble. Also, I didn't think the organizers would get mad. Like they didn't get mad when Moet brought chewing gum to school and convinced them to share some with him instead of just ratting him out. I snuck the notebook in my pocket. They never really checked our clothes because we were all kids. And because my hair had grown out a lot more since the last time Ma'am cut it short, I just needed to break my yellow number 2 pencil in half and hide it snug behind my ear. If I could have just written what I remembered down when it happened, then I wouldn't forget anymore. That's why Ma'am always made lists for shopping and tasks. The day started out like all other days. We made a line from tallest to shortest, waiting our turns to be taken to our assigned sleep machines. The room was pretty dark. All of the window blinds were closed, even though technically it was already nighttime, so it didn't really matter. Once, Otto told one of the organizers that it was a dumb idea, and she left him on the sleep machines for 10 minutes longer. So I learned my lesson, and I never talked to the organizers unless they asked me questions. I just waited until Antina was hooked up to her machine, because it was going to be my turn after. I really hoped they couldn't tell how hard and fast my heart was beating and get suspicious. Voila. I looked up at the organizer. Her hair was always tied up, although it still looked messy because her hair was naturally curly. It pulled the skin of her face back smooth because the knot was so tight. I thought she must be really wrinkly when she opened up that bun. Her frown deepened, like she could read my thoughts, and I really, really hoped not. Did you sleep today? I shook my head. Have any unusual thoughts or ideas? I knew I had to lie because when Otto once told the truth, he got into so much trouble that he had to stay in the laboratory for a week straight under the machines the whole time. Nope. The organizer had a yellow notepad with blue lines. Her fingers were pale because she was holding the pen so tight. Her eyebrows sunk low in her face as she read the monitor. Then she looked at my face as if she was angry. I wished I could read her thoughts because I wanted to know what that meant. Lay down, she instructed, and patted the pillow. I did as I was told, and I couldn't talk anymore because I was gritting my teeth and shutting my eyes and trying to think about something to distract myself from the pain as the pins and needles went in, the metal around my forehead and face cold and burning. It was the middle of the night. I knew because it was completely dark. The organizers were in the other room. Orange light spilled out from under the door that separated their room from ours. The monitor next to me beeped, but they laughed really loud and couldn't seem to hear it. Chairs scraped against the floor, and there was the beep beep of a microwave. It smelled like popcorn. No one else was awake. The room felt almost dead, but I knew the difference between being asleep and being dead, so it didn't scare me that much. I couldn't wait to tell Telma about it tomorrow. I wouldn't tell Otto, because he'd tell the organizers about it, even if he didn't mean to. I remembered my notebook and took it out and wrote a few things down about what I had seen when I was asleep. It was weird because I felt like already the images and sounds and everything was going away really fast. I couldn't remember it too well, so I hurried up. The world is big, like really big. There are places outside of Silicon City. It's not just a desert, but other cities. They look like Silicon City, though. There are work buildings and school buildings and also some shops and marketplaces, but I just know they're not the same. Also, the people look different. There was someone with red hair. It was weird, but kind of cool. I wonder if I can have red hair someday, too. The sound of my pencil lead against the notebook paper was really loud to my ears. I flinched each time the organizers talked a little loud, or it seemed like they might come out to check on us. I finished up my notes quickly. Then I put everything away and lay down again. It took me longer to fall asleep. The more I woke up and wrote, the harder it was for me to go to sleep again after. The pain from the machines and metal still hurt a lot, but it didn't feel as bad because my brain was preoccupied. I just stared into the dark and imagined what I saw. I didn't really know when I fell asleep again. I just knew it took longer because I was awake for longer. Talma didn't believe me when I told her about it the next day. At first, she made fun of me, and then she looked at me weird, so I stopped telling her about it after a while. I didn't tell my mom about it because I knew she'd get mad at me and get me in trouble with the organizers for breaking the rules. So I just kept writing, filling up notebook after notebook, and telling mom that I needed more notebooks for school. Wella, the organizer whispered as she removed the pins and needles. I blinked. No one else in the room was awake yet, which was weird because usually I always woke up after Telma. What? The organizer slapped me across the face. Don't talk. Why not? That got me another slap across the face on the other side. My cheeks burned up. I felt like I was going to cry, but I wasn't supposed to. Everyone would make fun of me later if they found out. I looked around again. The organizers shook their heads and unhooked Telma, Otto, and Tina and the others, but they didn't wake up. They just stayed asleep. The door opened and a tall man in a long black coat came in. He was wearing sunglasses even though we were indoors, and I checked the window. It was still night. Not much ever made sense around the place, but this made even less sense than the usual nonsense. Sunglass Man walked straight to me. His skin was dark and his hair was black as a raven's feathers. He frowned. Name? I opened my mouth, but the organizer answered before I could. Wella. Age? Just turned 11. The sunglass man's eyebrows rose, appearing for the first time from behind his shades. He turned to look at the organizer, and I knew this because he didn't just turn his head around. His whole body moved to face her. 11? Yes, sir. Odd. Yes, sir. The last one took about 54 years. It's certainly a disruption. We are looking for the cause now. I listened carefully, but I didn't know what any of it meant. Am I in trouble? I asked, even though the organizer had told me to shut it. Is it because of the notebook? The organizer slapped me again. It stung and my eyes got blurry. I tried to swallow my tears. What notebook? She asked. I'll take it from here, the sunglass man told her. He turned to face me again with his whole body. Then he held out a hand and I stared at it because I really didn't want to take it. But I did because Ma'am told me that I had to follow the rules of etiquette and listen to everything the organizers and leaders said, especially in the laboratory. His hand was cold and clammy. He guided me outside and took me along the halls of the laboratory. Everything there was white and spotless, reflecting the bright lights on the ceilings. And Tina told me that everything in the laboratory was made of fiberglass under all the cement and white bricks, something about keeping sound out, which made sense since we had to be able to fall asleep. Otto tried to scare me once and said that it was because they didn't want sound to go outside, but I never heard much around the place, so I knew he was lying and told him so. Does this mean I won't have to sleep ever again? The sunglass man looked at me, turned his whole body, seriously, what was wrong with the guy, and said, no. Where are we going? The president is waiting for you. Me? My throat felt dry all of a sudden. Well, someone like you. That's all he said. He started walking again, pulling me behind him. He was still holding my hand. I decided not to ask any more questions for a while. He wasn't much help anyways. The thought of meeting the president made my palms all sweaty. I'd only ever seen him for a few seconds at a time on the TV, between ads and shows and stuff. Mam used to spit when she saw him. Pap used to curse. Then he died on a special work mission, and he stopped cursing, and Mam stopped spitting. So I really didn't like the president that much. We reached the doors outside, and the sunglass man didn't hold the door for me, even though he was still holding my hand. Outside, the sun was coming up, hitting the white concrete hard and hurting my eyes. Everything in Silicon City was made of white bricks or metal, mostly because of how it was almost always nighttime. We hardly ever got much daylight, only a few hours a day or so, and the city was built to reflect the moonlight when it was dark out, to help preserve electricity. But that was why everyone usually stayed inside during the daytime. I wasn't ever outside really, because either I was at home helping Mam with her work. She did something with computers. She used to be an organizer once, which is why I tried not to hate them as much, or at school, or at the laboratory. Everything was always indoors, especially during the day. Whatever I knew was really from what Otto told me, because he said his brother worked with the techs and set up electricity and stuff outside. I was beginning to think he was a big fat liar, though. Almost nothing he said was ever really the truth. We walked for a really long time, enough that the sun had come up and was in the middle of the sky overhead. It was the first time that I'd ever seen it like that, and I tried to look at it, but my eyes started to burn. When I looked away, there was a big bright spot over everything that I looked at. I tried to close my eyes to make it stop, but it didn't. Then my feet started to hurt. We were walking along the asphalt roads. There were no automobiles during the night, but as we walked towards the ocean, I heard the rumblings of motors and engines starting. I wondered about Otto and Thelma and Tina. I couldn't wait to tell them about what it was like outside, and to tell Otto that he was a big liar. Were the organizers taking them off of the machines now? We were getting closer to the ocean. A boat was waiting at the dock, and a driver was sitting inside of it, staring at the waves that rocked him up and down. He didn't even look back at us when the sunglass man pushed me inside, and then followed in after, sitting across from me next to the driver. I was scared, but I tried not to show it. Anyways, Mam was going to come looking for me if I didn't show up at home. Last time I was late, she was furious, and she didn't let me have dinner as a lesson. I loved dinner because Mam was a great cook, so after that, I made sure to never be late again. This time, though, it wasn't going to be my fault, so I really hoped that she'd let me eat. I didn't know how much time passed, but it was still daytime when we reached the island. I was sweating a lot, and my hair was almost soaked. The sun seemed like it was chasing us as we moved, kind of like how the moon did at night when I walked outside with Mam and my cousin Jink. He never talked, not after his parents left him alone at our house, and Mom thought walking around the parks outside our house would help him feel better. I tried to talk to him sometimes, but he just looked at me with big, sad eyes, so I gave up after a while.
That's
okay.
great. Thank you so much, Zahara. It's such a surreal and unusual and original story. The sunglass man still haunts me, so really good. Thank you so much. So our second reader is Rachel Lutzko, who will be reading from her poetry and fiction. Rachel is a senior majoring in secondary education with a focus in English. She was born in New Jersey, but moved to Michigan in third grade. She is currently working on several short stories, poems, and a fantasy book series titled Rise of Black Moon. In her free time, she enjoys playing Dungeons and Dragons and drawing. Please welcome Rachel.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. If my cat starts meowing, I'm sorry in advance. The first thing I'm planning on reading is somewhat of a poetry prose hybrid thing. I don't really know how to classify it. It could technically fall under either one. However, I do want to give a very quick content warning. Some parts of this are a little bit sensitive, especially if you have a background in trauma and unwanted contact. just as a very quick warning. It's called Hands. I still feel your hands on me. I can still feel the caress of your fingers like a wicked blade over my cheek, threatening to part skin from skin, threatening bloodshed and pain. I've been hurt before. I've stared death in the face and returned without a scar. I've died to cruel laughs and wicked grins. I've died to arrows and daggers stabbed deep in my back. This mortal body, this second chance has known arrows and daggers far more than it has known a sickeningly soft stroke of a taunting hand. The phantom of your thumb dragging along my cheek still haunts me. These empty halls are congested with your touch. The walls constrict, confine, trap me as you did. There's no escape. I can't run from your specter. I can't hide from the ghost of your memory. I can no longer look in the mirror of my home. Every time I do, I don't see myself. I see a scared girl I don't recognize, with hands trespassing on her body, with your smirking visage constantly by her side. Sometimes I don't even need mirrors to see your reflection beside me. Sometimes I see you waiting when I turn the corner. Sometimes I see you in bed beside me. Sometimes I see you in the face of my lover, in the fathomless forest in your eyes. No one understands that I am never alone. They can't see your sullied hands upon me. They can't see the scarlet dripping from your palms or the red impressions around my throat. When I think of your touch, I feel my throat closing when I try to breathe. My heart beats faster and my legs start to tremble. I hate to admit that I'm afraid, but I'm terrified. I put on this show. I throw on a mask. I pretend like nothing you did affected me. I pretend like I didn't lose all control. I pretend that I'm a cold-hearted bitch, unruffled, untouchable, unaffected. But my stone walls crack and reveal me for what I truly am. Afraid, small, hurt, and unable to put together my broken pieces. I don't know how to fix the holes you tore in my defenses. I don't know how to dam up my heart and allow nothing in. I've seen you in my sleep, in my dreams, and even in my waking hours. You know what happened. You know what you did to me, but you never react. You don't feel remorse or regret or anything at all. You're more frigid than I am, more glacial than any winter storm. You're more heartless than stone and unmoving as mountains. And still, you smile and you reach for me again. I don't want to feel your hands on me anymore. I don't want to feel your hands on me ever again. I want knives to be the only thing that touches my skin. I want arrows to be the only thing that hurts me. Blood dries, wounds heal, and scars will fade. I've known crusted crimson surrounding open wounds. I've known those same wounds as they begin to heal, and I've known deep-seated scars that dwindle with time. I cannot do that now with you, despite how you have hurt me. I can't wash your hands away like dried blood, and you left no injury that could heal with medicine. The scars you left won't ever fade. Not with time, not while your hands are still tightly latched onto me. Scars aren't always skin deep, and I can't begin to control my own weakness, my bleeding heart that cries each night when I feel you over me. You're a battle I can't win, a war I can't end. I can't seize victory when I can't order my eyes not to see you reflected back at me. I can't command my skin to erase your every last impression. I can't force my brain to burn every last thought of you. You've taken command of me, your bitter smile, your vicious hands, your lies hissed through gritted teeth. My body still obeys your memory. But my sleepless nights afforded me endless hours of planning. My bed has become a war table, my dreams combat plans. I've lost countless clashes, but this battle queen has yet to lose her crown. Despite the pain, the fear, the control you have over me, I will once again return from the realm of death I'm so achingly familiar with. I will once again use the darkness as my ally and choke you with the same pain, the same terror you have inflicted on me. The war may be over, but the rebellion has just begun. I'll overthrow myself to conquer you. I'll get your hands off me. And then I have one more thing to read, and I think this one's a little bit shorter. It's a very short little snippet of something that I'd like to include in Rise of Black Moon one day. That's the fantasy story that I'm working on. So as a little bit of context, this is fantasy. As I wipe the tears from his face, my hand wraps around his white-knuckled grip on his bloodied sword. It's okay, I reassure him, my voice soft. He's fragile right now. I'll need to be careful. It's okay. Let it go, darling. Slowly, uncertainly, he loosens his fingers and allows me to slip the weapon from his grasp. I set it aside, out of his reach, and he slumps against me. Wrapping my arms around him, my free hand runs through his hair, carefully untangling the mats knotted in the dark locks. Carnage lies all around us, mutilated bodies and the heavy sense of death, like hot tar beaten by the summer heat. Whenever I move, blood squelches in the earth beneath me. Shock affects everybody differently, and this battle was his first time seeing actual combat. It's no surprise that his mind attacks him in such a cruel way, something I'm all too familiar with. The man, a young adult, really, a child, fresh out of adolescence, cries into my shoulder. Between his sobs, he chokes out, I killed them. I killed them all. They're dead because of me. How will my hands ever be clean again? God, I can still see their faces. Shh. It's okay. I press a kiss onto the top of his hair, and salt from sweat and blood stings my lips. You are no monster. You followed your orders, like any soldier would. I killed them all, the Nivahavian repeats, a broken record, a scratch that can't be skipped. I don't deserve to live after this. What have I done? He puts pressure against my arms, straining, attempting to reach his discarded weapon. I tighten my grip, pulling him closer to me. I am no longer a warrior, but not for lack of talent or strength. He will not break my hold on him anytime soon. Your life still has so much worth, I murmur. I thought the same after what I have done. I was in your position once. It was my very first battle, just like this was yours. I slaughtered everyone in my path, cut them down as easily as I would breathe. At the end of it all, when I saw the carnage around me and realized what I had done and what I had become, I slit my own throat with the blade that claimed the lives of so many innocent people. My scar burns as it is mentioned, a reminder of the atrocities I've committed, but also a testament to mercy, to second chances, to balance. One of my hands half-consciously grazes the long-healed wound. Phantom pain sears my nerves, as fresh as the day I left this mark. I thought death was the only answer, that the only penance was to remove myself from the world entirely, as if that could make up for the terrible crime I committed. But taking your life is no way to repair the damage you caused. It's the easy way out, avoiding responsibility and running away from what we have to do. We are both Nivahavians. We both know that Nivahavians don't run because something is challenging or scary. We rise up and face it because we both know that we have the strength and the resilience to do so. My life was spared on that battlefield for a reason. They saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, but now I see it in you. You can do better than you did today. The Nivahavian warrior doesn't answer right away. Silence reigns between the two of us, and I dare not break it. I allow him his time to think, to consider. Gradually, his trembling body relaxes into mine. The tension drains from his strained muscles, and he releases a long sigh. I can do better. He sounds uncertain, but it's a start. I nod, loosening my grip on him. You can do better, just as I have. Do not forget your past. Remember it and let it inspire you to do more in the future. Do better in the future. I stand up and offer my hand. He takes it, and I tug him to his feet. His red-rimmed eyes meet mine, but instead of brimming with tears, they burn with a familiar fire of determination. He only breaks eye contact to bow his head in my direction. Thank you for helping me. It is more kindness than I deserve. I lift his chin with a single finger, and a small smile flickers on my lips. You are more than your mistakes, darling. You are worthy of kindness. We both are.
Wow, thank you, Rachel. The poetry and fantasy, just two really powerful first-person narratives. That was just wonderful. Thank you. So our third reader is Penny Kane, who will be reading from her creative nonfiction. Penny is a senior pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Integrative Studies with concentrations in communications, criminology, criminal justice, and public health. She's also a 4+1 student working on her Master of Science in Criminology and Criminal Justice, while also completing her undergraduate degree. Penny is currently working on her first memoir, a collection of essays from her prison experience at Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility. She enjoys baking, competitive recipe contests, Broadway musicals, and advocating for incarcerated women in her free time. Penny was also just recently featured on the UM-Dearborn Reporter, which is really neat. So Penny, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, friends and professors, for attending. And I'm going to be reading Prison is No Place for a Vagina. It was originally written in Professor Darling's class for the vagina monologues. It's been adapted a few times since. 8 years ago, I began a 58-month journey inside the Michigan Department of Corrections that I never expected to take. It changed me. I became an observer of the treatment of women inside the prison, and it horrified me. Prison's no place for a vagina. The hour ride to Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility wasn't too bad. It was a pretty August morning, and the 2 Oakland County deputies that escorted me were very respectful and kind, and they rocked classic rock all the way there. But the first sight of the double razor fence robbed me of every ounce of breath. The van pulled in and the gates immediately locked behind us. At that moment, it became real. I looked around and I noticed the sun sparkled like diamonds on the razor fence. As I regained my breath, a calm came over me. I took the classic rock and the diamonds as a good omen that I could do this. One of the first things they do when you enter prison intake is they make you strip in front of others. You're required to sit bare ass on a seat that others have sat on before, moving and manipulating your body in an uncomfortable manner as they invasively examine you. This was a new low. I thought I was gonna gag. This was topped off by a very uncomfortable delousing shower with virtually no privacy. This was lesson 1, learning that I no longer had the right to privacy. You can say that was the cherry on top of the sundae that day. Next, I received a duffel bag filled with what would be referred to as my personal property. It is my state portion, a term you grow to learn, and one of the few rights as a prisoner that you can insist on, although it's often ignored. They take what you arrive with. I arrived commando, leaving my undergarments to the women at the Oakland County Jail, since most of them will wear the same pair of panties for a year. I knew that in my new lockup, I would be issued new ones. You are issued a winter coat, an all-season windbreaker, same thing, with very little stuffing, long basketball shorts, and starter toiletries. MDOC makes almost no consideration for women. Men and women are treated the same way, with a few exceptions. All women prisoners receive 2 rolls of toilet paper per week, not nearly enough if you're flowing. Women also receive 1 24-pack of pads per month, even if you're menopausal. It's their state portion. However, that's nowhere near enough for those who have hard periods. Even though they're supposed to provide you as needed, there were never any extras, creating a unique black market. I remember being without coffee the first month of menopause and being very excited that I was able to parlay those pads into my caffeine fix. By the way, this kind of exchange is not allowed. This is just the tip of the iceberg in women's gynecological health care at a women's prison. I've seen several young women miscarry before they were even fully admitted into prison for lack of care. I seen a friend of mine go to healthcare in the morning with flu-like symptoms, being sent back to her housing unit and told, take an aspirin, drink lots of water, and if you don't feel any better by tonight, call your family. She was dead by that evening. It turned out to be a deadly fungus circulating the facility and is now being investigated by the CDC. I've seen women needing to be hospitalized and almost dying following standard OBGYN procedures, like a pap test. I've seen women almost bleed to death after these procedures, sent back to their housing unit to care for themselves and beg the other inmates for enough pads to do so. We did take care of each other. The big game was to not document your medical complaints so that if it got worse, they could, if it got worse from neglect, they could say it doesn't show that you even ever mentioned it before. I experienced one very uncomfortable OBGYN appointment. It was coming up before my release date. I was 55 years old. My mother had died of ovarian cancer and I was incarcerated. With the uncertainty of immediate medical care upon my release, I wanted to leave with all my annuals. First, the office was filthy and the administration knew it. They did not even change the paper on the exam table each time. The doctor was not much taller than me with a beard to his waist. He looked like a gnome. During the most painful pap test that I've ever experienced, I was asked, did I want a rectal exam? I answered, as I answered, the nurse tapped me on my thigh as if she was warning me. She was trying to tell me something.
We'll just give Penny a moment. Looks like she's having internet trouble.
Was about to come. I reported it and filed the paperwork against him. About a week later, I was called up back to healthcare to see another MD. I was told that they needed to redo the pap test. It turned out he clipped the wrong tissue during my pap exam. The pap that was the most painful pap test I ever had, and now they're going to do it again. I also had a strange breakout on my scalp, and for 3 months I was told that I had infected psoriasis. Eventually, and very quickly, 2 spots grew at the top of my head the size of a golf ball. The nurses were automatically took a culture of it, but the doctor denied sending it to the lab and said that the antibiotics would work. After a few days, I had an allergic reaction to the prescription and I couldn't breathe. They refused to prescribe me a replacement. In extreme pain, a month later, a culture was finally sent. It turned out to be MRSA. They withheld the diagnosis from me. It went untreated for 4 months. I was not isolated, forced to attend my schedule, go to chow with others. At 4'10" with open lesions on my head, the size of a golf ball, oozing something that looked like honey that everyone could see, I was treated like a leper. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. To be fair, it wasn't all bad. The woman who gave the mammograms was excellent. A few of the nurses knew how to lock in your patient history so that they could not tamper with it later. They had our back. They were fired. The pregnant women lived next door to healthcare and were provided a sack lunch as a 4th meal. Some of the saddest things were watching the mothers receive news of their children that had died and being told that they were not allowed to attend the funeral. Because the facility thought the drugs were being sent in by mail, children's artwork, which hung on most refrigerators, were no longer allowed to be sent to mothers. They suspected drugs were hidden in the crayons. Officers collected them as contraband, artwork that had previously been sent. This bothered all the women. There was a paralyzing, respectful hush that hangs over the facility when someone dies. I saw suicides, overdose, and deaths from natural causes regularly. Last I heard, 2.5 suicides at a woman's Huron Valley per year was the average. I learned the statistic from the facility's senior psychiatrist during a training to become a prisoner observation aide, POA, also known as suicide watch. While working my POA prison detail, I can recall watching another woman whose daughter had died. And as a precaution, they put her on one-on-one observation. She was even more distraught that she was not allowed to call her other children to hear their voices on the day of their sister's funeral. While on these precautions, my job was to keep them calm and safe. This was difficult. It broke my heart watching her. Everyone at the facility knew and liked a beautiful 25-year-old Cutter. She grew up at the facility. I knew her well and from my work, and she struggled with mental health issues and was placed on precautions many times. Her request to be placed on suicide watch was not only ignored, but it was also the butt of a joke. Several heard officers say, "You owe me lunch," Subway to be exact. They had bet that she was going to go on precautions. She hung herself with her panties in the shower stall that she was being held in. That officer's currently serving 6 months in jail for manslaughter. Prison's no place for a vagina.
Oh, thank you. Wow, thank you, Penny. Just really a vivid and unflinching piece. Just such an important story to tell. Thanks for sharing that and really honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, so our final reader is Professor Wessam Elmeligi, who will be discussing his graphic novels. Wessam has a PhD in literary theory and is director of the Comparative Literature Certificate and director of the Arabic Translation Certificate at the University of Michigan-Dearborn. His first book, The Poetry of Arab Women from Pre-Islamic Age to Andalusia, collects, translates, and studies over 400 poems by 200 classical and medieval Arab female poets. Many of those have not been studied in English before. His second book, Cultural Identity in Arabic Novels of Immigration, A Poetics of Return, is a study of migration and identity in Arabic novels, spanning as early as the 12th centuries, Hay ibn Yaqzan to Manal al-Tahawi's 2010 Brooklyn Heights, including seminal works by writers such as Taha Hussein and Tawfiq al-Hakim, and novels from Egypt, Sudan, Lebanon, and Yemen. He's published articles on narratology, science fiction, mythology, cinema, and writers such as Najib Mahfouz, Sunala Ibrahim, and Rauda Ashur. Wessam is also a graphic novelist and artist. And Wessam is actually going to share his screen with us too. Wessam, can you?
I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, there you
I'll
are.
share. Thank you so much, Hassan. Yeah, and thank you for having me. This is.
Sure.
I mean, yeah. I feel. I mean, after all the wonderful stuff that was read, I mean, I hope mine sort of stands a chance sort of after all this and doesn't bore everybody.
Oh no, it's gonna be great. Wessam, can you share? I think you have the ability to share.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I can. Yeah. I think I can share the screen. Just a second. Let me. Can everyone see it? Is it shared now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, I'll be talking about 2 graphic novels. I'll have to go through them because I mean it will be a little bit long. But the idea here is like I'm very excited to show how I'm trying to use images and text at the same time. I'm teaching a course on comic books as well, so it's this is very interesting sort of for me, and it's a lot of it is experimental. The first graphic novel relies mainly on images without the more traditional panel and speech balloons that you see in graphic novels and comic books. The second one is slightly more traditional. The first one is also done mainly in ink and pencil, whereas the second one is in watercolors. So the first one is called Why and Why. I mean, I apologize for that because I'll have to explain rather than actually give the full literary experience or reader experience with letting you read or read the whole thing, because if I do that, it will take much longer. So I'll have to like go through some parts at the risk of sounding like Henry Fielding, sort of interfering every now and then and talking to the reader or something. So, which, yeah. Anyway, so what the first graphic novel is called Why and Why, and it was inspired by my daughter, my son's names. Their names Yasmina and Yasin begin with Y's, and I did this when we first arrived to the United States around 9 years ago, and at the time the Arab Spring was in full swing, and I was worried about what is going on in the world and the world as I know it and as they know it. So it's it follows a boy and a girl, and we don't have their names. Of course, the why and why are also like why as a question. A boy and a girl who wake up and find their city deserted. It's slightly apocalyptic, and they don't see anyone. They're completely alone in a deserted city. And as they walk on, they start revisiting places that they used to go to or that they're used to, like average or children go to. So the first one is a toy store. And I don't write dialogue for this one, but I write like, a bit like lullabies or something for children, but the meaning is much more macabre than that. So I'm a toy and he's a soldier. War is real and so is torture. And some of the drawings, the idea here is to make drawings speak for themselves. This was happening when in many countries in the Middle East and Arabic-speaking countries, there was this tension between the religious right wing and between the military. And in a sense, the innocence of the children here is being torn between those two. So they go first to a toy store and let the pictures speak for themselves. As you can see here, they're terrified when they see toy soldiers. And then next they go to a grocery store. Eat your veggies, eat your fruits, you'd run faster than their boots. So veggies are something that they need in order to run faster than the soldiers' boots. If you notice in the last panel over here, there's no one to take payment, but they still make a payment. I mean, they're like the traditional well-brought-up kids. They don't just take the food and go. They find a puppy who becomes their friend for the rest of the journey. And then they go to the school, need more desks or writing tools, money for wars, but not for schools. This is their school that they revisit when it's destroyed. And then they go to a theme park. Let's go to the amusement park. It's best when it's dark, fireworks and Ferris wheel. Only this time, the fire is real. And they go to the scary house or the horror house, and inside, they're not terrified of the ghosts that are in there because they have seen, I mean, we guess that they have seen real death. And they even take the toy skeleton and do what they have been used to by now, bury it. If you notice, some of the shadows over here are replicating some famous artworks with the flags and the soldiers. And they go to a shop where they put together the models that they see, and they're reconstructing gender, which it's like a quick comment on how gender is a social construct. So, and I mean, in their innocence, they see it as something that they can reconstruct in any way they want. Next, they go to a library. I used to love paper books. but now I love Kindles and Nooks. At least I'd still be able to read when they burn all the books. The next part, they find a library, and it's the one thing that gives them enough peace, and they can actually fall asleep. And then they go to a museum. Some were stolen, some were broken, some were taken as a token, some were booed and tabooed, or were taken as a loot. The reference I'm making over here is to some Egyptian or ancient Egyptian artifacts and monuments that are still in Europe up until today, and they need to give those back. I mean, people of the countries that have some of those monuments breaking them because they see them as against a religious experience, or religious faith, or ideology. So whether it's people of the countries themselves, like natives of the country, or whether it's during colonialism, I mean, the victims are always the cultures and the heritage. And they go to a museum here and they find it completely looted or destroyed, and they try to put together whatever is left of the museum, or whatever is left of some of the monuments. The last part, I mean, I'm skipping some things. They go to the beach, and as they're swimming, they see a dead body floating, and they run and go again to the library. It's becoming their sanctuary now, or it's the place of refuge where they always go. After that, as they woke, they see finally civilization, a group of people in the distance, but as you can see from their expression, they make a decision. They are done with society, and they decide to go back to the library. They seal it off, and they're going to spend the rest of their lives locked up in the library with whatever artifacts they've managed to get. And you notice here that they are getting older, so they're more like adolescents here. Okay, this is the first graphic novel. The second one is called Jamila, and Jamila in Arabic means beautiful. And this one's, the art style is different. It's done in watercolors. And it's about a woman in Egypt in Nubia in particular, southern Egypt, who travels and learns more about herself and her heritage as she comes to the United States and returns to Egypt and so on. I read just parts of it and maybe also go through some of the images. Nubia, southern Egypt, where the Nile can smile. It doesn't always smile though. It doesn't always speak either. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it just glides. My feet recognize stone. Stone differs from grass. Grass clings to feet. Stone is aloof, detached. There's affection in grass, but there is freedom in stone. Wood is alive. The sap still breathes inside it. It talks to me. I'm Jamila. My name means beautiful. As the narrative progresses, she visits temples in Luxor and in Aswan, which are very close to Nubia. So she starts reconnecting with her heritage. This is Hatshepsut's temple. Her father, who is on his deathbed, tells her, my Jamila, I'm leaving you and your mother alone. If you were a boy, I would be peacefully knowing I'm leaving behind a son. So his very last words are very hurtful to her, that he regrets not having a son. As she starts reminiscing about this, she starts reconnecting with ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses and deities, and one of them is Nut. I think of her as father's words sting my memory. The Egyptian sky was not ashamed of her body. Her breasts fed the rivers and the earth. When she let her hair loose, it curtained Ra's sun and brought the night. In the morning, she pulled it back to let the day begin. Stars sparkled from her eyes and guided travelers. Nut was a woman, father. Would you have still wanted a son if I were Nut? The idea here is that ancient Egypt, and like many ancient civilizations, in many cases were were focused on female deities and were matriarchies, as opposed to the move towards patriarchal in more recent civilizations and more recent societies and social constructs. She also started thinking of modern examples of women, such as Kulthum, who is an iconic singer, Arab singer from Egypt. I know our village prefers sons. I'm sure other villages do too, like Kulthum's village. Why can't my father be like Kulthum's father? He dressed her up as a boy so she could sing in festivals and weddings. When she grew up, he let her go to Cairo, where she became one of the best known divas of all time. And now her village is proud of her. Hatshepsut is one of the oldest matriarchs in recorded history. While she was a queen, women in most of the world were used for sex and breeding. Like Kulthum, at first she wore a king's attire and armor. When she became a queen, everyone was so awed by her achievements, no one objected to a woman on the throne anymore. So she's making connections to women in her history and in her heritage. And here there is an entire list of some female queens in the history of ancient Egypt. At the time when female deities of other lands were for hearth and sex only, those magnificent women had Sishat, an Egyptian deity of writing and drawing, which is true. I mean, one of the ancient in ancient Egypt, one of the gods or one of the deities of writing was a female. So I mean, the idea over here is that women were seen, or females were seen as goddesses of writing, and not just goddesses of hearth and of family, as you would see in many other mythologies. At a certain point in the narrative, I skipped sort of some part over here. She's sexually assaulted by someone she thinks he likes her. And what we see over here is a lioness, and the lioness in some Middle Eastern cultures is actually taken as a derogatory expression referring to women. But the lioness in ancient Egypt was actually the goddess of war and the goddess of battle. The Nile remembers, however, when the lioness symbolized battle and healing. The man who assaulted her said that he thought because she kissed him, or that she agreed to kiss him, that she was asking for it, or she was asking for the assault that he did on her. And there is an entire thing where he starts ranting about this, and she, you can see the red color over here expressing the anger and the fear and the trauma that she goes through. She decides to travel to Cairo. And again, I'm skipping sort of some parts. And this is a scene from Old Cairo, or Hussein in particular. And we're moving away from southern Egypt, which is very much focused on ancient Egyptian heritage because of all of the monuments concentration over there. But in Cairo, you have a lot of like Islamic and Coptic heritage. Old Cairo, 1,000 years of art, where wood, copper, silver, and cobblestones have long formed their own community of colors, living side by side with humans. Old Cairo, where wood shutters and marble balconies share stories about the residents that some of the residents themselves don't know. She meets a relative over there, and she decides to resume her education, and she goes to Cairo University. If the Nile goes through Cairo, the Mediterranean embraces Alexandria. After Cairo, she goes to Alexandria. Alexandria is my city, so I had to include it in the novel. Cairo calls you to its squares and alleys, tirelessly surrounds you like it circles the Nile. Alexandria waits for you patiently, like it waits for the raging waters or the raging waves to come to its shores. And you will come, like the boats, and you'll find colors that don't match like the colors of the boats. And because they don't intend to match, they do. She goes to the Library of Alexandria, which is one of the most celebrated libraries historically. And the Alexandria Library was more like a university. It laid out a structure emulated now by universities with reading rooms, lecture rooms, dining space, and gardens. It's like a living body. Words flow in its veins, scrolls nourish it. Its mind is made up of the thousands of the ancient world's greatest minds. Its soul is the passions, dreams, and pain of those who wrote and of those who wept, laughed and jotted down notes as they read what was written. No, I changed my mind. It's not a living body. It's heaven. This is a drawing of the actual modern Alexandria Library now, which is one of my favorite places in the city. She goes on to grad school. She gets her master's. She gets her PhD. And she talks a little bit about what she learned. So this is a drawing from Andalusia and some of the poets of that age. And she tells their stories in her narrative. Hafsa and Abu Ja'far, two Andalusian poets. While women were denied basic literacy in most of the world, Hafsa was one of many Andalusian women poets who outshone men. I talked about the agency women had in early Arabic culture, like the poet Walada bint al-Mustakfi, daughter of Muhammad III, Umayyad Caliph in Cordoba. One of her, on her dress, she would weave poetry. On one side was, by God, I deserve the highest of places, and I walk my walk in pride. On the other, I enable my lover to kiss my cheeks and give my kisses to whom I choose. This is a true story of a poet in Andalusian times who used to write poetry on her clothes. The idea here is that she is, I mean, I'm trying to incorporate real stories, whether from ancient history or Andalusian and medieval history. And again, this character is Happy, or the deity of the Nile, who was half male, half female. And Isis, again, as she travels the world, she feels like Isis traveling wings. I'll have to move on. I know I don't want to take too much time. So she traveled and goes to the United States, and this was one place that I saw in the Library of Congress. And I saw this with my children when we first came many years ago, and I saw signs and writing referring to American Egypt on the ceiling of the Jefferson Room. And it was very impressive, and it was something that I told my children, and I wanted to communicate that in the graphic novel over here. The Library of Congress, that icon, the largest library in the world now. I came from a world of words and lines, questions and answers, to another galaxy of ideas and colors, of debates old and new. And she makes a connection between Egypt, her birthplace, and the United States. She starts learning, again, getting another degree in the United States, and she reads about the suffering, and she reads about the history. And this particular drawing is from Beloved, Toni Morrison's, and this is one of my favorite novels because, I mean, I've actually studied Toni Morrison for my master's, and this is the part where where Seti describes the tree on her back, or the scars of the whippings that she used to get. The slave owners left a tree on the pregnant mother's back. I'll never see trees the same again. And the next part, this is a poem I'm sure many of you might recognize. She gets sexually assaulted in the US as well. The idea here is to balance sort of how women are treated regardless of what community they're in. We didn't read only novels. This might be a bit disturbing for some because there is an element of assault in it. We didn't read only novels, we read poems too. I'm nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they'd banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody, how public to tell your name like a frog. It's a lifelong day to an admiring bog. This, of course, Emily Dickinson's. And at the time, I was very much influenced by, actually terrified by the comments on made at the time about grabbing women. And I did this drawing at the time. This was sort of a reflection of my frustration at finding this even here. This was during the elections of, I think, I can't remember, 16 or something. After that, she makes a comparison between why women are always seen in binaries, either completely covered up or completely objectified. I mean, both are different types of objectification. Why am I always seen in binaries, the victimized concubine or the bitter witch, the docile housewife or the ruthless boss, the prude or the slut, the saint or the female or the femme fatale, cold or hysterical. And then she meets two men. I mean, I'm going to go through this more quickly. One she meets in Cairo, but eventually he gets jealous of her career, and they decide to end the relationship. And as you can see over here, he tells her, thanks for asking. I thought it was all about you. I haven't got it all figured out like you. I'm not like you, top of class, honors. And then you can see the jealousy, the difficulties that some men would have in being with a more intelligent person. And she starts contemplating, maybe I should give up working. Maybe I should just have children and settle down and give up my dreams. When she travels, she meets someone else, and they seem to share a lot of ideas until later on she finds out that he was actually talking to her a lot because he was writing the story of her life and publishing it as a book. So in a sense, she was objectified, but not physically here. She was objectified intellectually. So she was a story for him. And she tells him, I'm covering her face only because that's how you want to see me. Is this why you wanted me to wait before writing my own work? Is this why you made me feel inferior to you so you could use my story? I was so happy I pre-ordered your book. I couldn't wait. Saving Fatima? What a title. A girl escaping honor killing, saved by a white man who gives her an education. I'm as educated as a convert. Frees her from backwardness. I didn't come here to be saved. I came here to create, to grow. Or does my growth intimidate you, Bert? What did I do to upset you, Bert? Is it where I come from? Is it my gender, my name? Or is it what I'm capable of creating? It's a whole new level of abuse, in a sense, that she feels. After that, she decides to experiment with art, and she throws herself in colors. As you can see over here, she's like swimming in colors, and she produces art. And for her, it's a Pandora's box, which is one of the classical examples of villainizing or demonizing women, that when a woman opens a Pandora's box in Greek mythology, all evil comes out. It's how evil is created. But for her, Pandora's box is when a women let themselves create, they produce art and music and science. In the next couple of pictures, she switches many of the classical myths, particularly Greek mythology. So instead of Theseus in Greek myths saving the day, it is actually and solving riddles. What we have here is a female who's doing this and so on. And also instead of Perseus, who cuts off the head of Medusa, and Medusa is a classic example of the victim of sexual assault, because she was sexually assaulted by Zeus, but the actual story makes her a seductress, and she's punished for that. She actually becomes this terrible creature with the heads of snakes and so on, and she's an important figure in feminist theory. And again, a drawing of Pygmalion, of its character, falls in love with his female statue. My version, women are neither made nor owned by men. Again, Europa in mythology, she is abducted by Zeus, but in that drawing, in her version of the drawing, she's actually leading the bull rather than being abducted by him. Now, this is the last page over here. She remembers her childhood and what her grandmother tells her. You are a repository of memories, the color of my grandmother. Come, my Jamila, come to your grandmother. Like Egypt is your gift, you bring memories of distant gifts. Close your lovely eyes, my Jamila. Yes, tuta. Tuta is a traditional Arab word for grandma. Your grandmother is going to give you a gift. Now you can open those gazelle eyes, dear. Your first grown-up earrings. My tata gave them to me when I was your age. For me, those are for me. Here we go, my Jamila. Now wear my words like those earrings. That's a traditional expression in Arabic to wear advice as if they are earrings. You're the daughter of the deepest of rivers and the highest of trees, of poets and queens, farmers and gazelles. Wear your history and womanhood like your earrings. Wear them with dignity, for your name means beautiful. Well, that's it. And I can unshare. Stop share.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Sorry, I took too long. Yeah.
That was just so transportive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, and your commentary was also just so insightful.
Thank you.
Both graphic novels are for sale, right? Anyone can order them. I actually have to have a couple of copies of them. So thank you so much, Wissam. And I also want to thank the other writers for today, Zahara, Rachel, Penny, and Wissam. Thank you all for presenting your wonderful work, and thank you to our audience for attending tonight's reading. That was wonderful. Thank you all. We can give like a virtual round of applause to the writers. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll see everyone.
And actually to you, Ghassan, for hosting us and for doing this. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you deserve the applause.
We'll do it again next semester. We'll do it every semester. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, amazing. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you all.